Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another video episode, and for our Spotify listeners, of course, our podcast episode of Historically Athletic. We had some technical difficulties for our first Super Bowl run when we were trying to record that episode, and we weren't able to figure that out. There was a nice hum that Big J recognized, and the quality just was not what we would want to put out there. So we decided to do, I guess you could call it a re-record of our Super Bowl episode, a Super Bowl wrap, and just kind of wanted to go over some of those key points. I know the game was a couple weeks ago, but it was the end of the football season, and we just didn't feel like it was right to not have a wrap-up considering what we've done the entire season.
Especially to recap the Super Bowl and everything that happened in that game. It just, technical difficulties, it's going to get to everyone once in a while. So
was that technical difficulties kind of like what was happening when 50 Cent was upside down during the halftime show?
It looked like he was left upside down for a little too long. He'd been waiting for his cue a little bit too long there.
I will say, though, it was a spectacle. I mean, that was
a great Super Bowl halftime show.
It was. That halftime show was amazing. The fact that the Bengals' first touchdown was a touchdown throw by Mixon. The fact that Burrow took the most sacks in Super Bowl history, tied that record. McVay ended up being the
controversial 75-yard touchdown
by Higgins. And then, of course, the penalties in the fourth quarter that just were odd considering the circumstances, considering how the game was called through the majority of it.
Yep.
There's definitely some talking points there, but the Rams ended up winning 23-20 over the Bengals. Cooper Kupp scored their final touchdown to give them the lead, and he ended up winning Super Bowl MVP, and
deservedly so.
A worthy MVP considering his body of work throughout the season and also his performance in the Super Bowl.
Right. A lot of people could argue.
Two touchdown catches, like 90 yards, something like that? What did he end up finishing with?
He ended up finishing with 92 yards, averaging 11.5. And 2 touchdowns, you're right. He had 10 targets, so 8 receptions on those 10 targets.
He was the Rams' offense because they couldn't run the football.
And then obviously Odell going down early in the game was huge because, up until that point, he already had 3 targets, 2 receptions of 52 yards. He had that one nice deep 35-yard catch there. And
he had a touchdown catch.
He had a touchdown, So it's one of those things that, with Odell going down, they didn't have Higbee in there either, so they were thin on reserves.
Well, here's the question, though, and I know you had some points on this specifically from Mr. Baldinger over with the NFL on this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it kind of felt like L.A. didn't necessarily win this game as much as Cincinnati lost it.
Kind of gave it away, yeah.
Yeah. What did you have specifically in that regard? Because, I mean,
so
the Bengals didn't have their best game by any means.
No, and Joe Burrow, having to run for his life like that, what was it? I think 7 sacks is what he ended up having on him, and for a loss of 43 yards. So
it was a ton of pressure.
Ton of pressure, and obviously with Aaron Donald taking the game over those last 2 plays.
And Von Miller showing out towards the end, too.
Yep, and Ashawn Robinson. So the defensive line, which is what the Rams' bread and butter was, what they were going to rely on.
It was the defining factor in the game. And that Mike Jones dude, or what was his name? Not Mike Jones. What was that guy's name? Oh, my gosh.
Oh, here we go. It's Jones. I think you're right here. Let me find it. It is... Oh, man. I don't have it.
He was one of their leading tacklers.
Let's see. So, in the leading tacklers for defense, Ernest Jones.
Ernest, that's what it was. I knew it was a Jones. I was like, Mike Jones was the guy that made that tackle for the St. Louis Rams in the Tennessee-St. Louis Super Bowl back when we were kids.
Right, yeah. So, Ernest Jones, he had a sack, 7 total tackles, and 2 tackles for a loss. He had 3 QB hits, too. So, putting the pressure on.
He balled out.
He had a great game. I mean, we talk about, like I said, Ashawn Robinson, 6 total tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss, and he had 1 QB hit on top of that. Aaron Donald, though, obviously the most disruptive, and Von Miller both equaled 2 sacks each and 3 QB hits. So Joe Burrow was running, the whole time. It wasn't probably as bad as what Patrick Mahomes was running last year before, but at the same time, it was just one of those very difficult things. And to your point, talking about how it felt just more like the game was a great game. It was a close game. Cincinnati got ahead early.
It was very tense in a good way.
Yeah, it was a great game. And it just really did feel like it was Cincinnati's game to lose, and they lost it. I mean, there's several points here. Brian Baldinger, one of the NFL analysts, after the Super Bowl had, 4 points to really go over where Cincinnati had their miscues. And it starts with the very first possession of the game. They go for it on 4th and 1, midfield. Ballsy call by
I
Zach
liked
Taylor.
it. I liked how aggressive they were going to play because they were playing to win, not to lose.
And it's 4th and 1. You should at midfield. You should be able to pick up 1 yard,
even against that defensive line.
Even against that deal. So I thought that was probably one of the biggest deals, especially watching that game live. I knew right then. I was like, oh, I love the call. I did not like the execution because what happened on that call, they bring Higgins in motion across the field from the left to the right. And the defense switches, right? They switched from their zones, and you see who is it? It's Scott and Jalen Ramsey. I think it's what's his name?
Yeah,
Nick
right.
Scott.
Nick Scott. Yeah.
Nick Scott. You see them right when Higgins is coming all the way to he's filling his motion out. They hike the ball. He goes right out to the flat, wide open for 1 yard. All you need is a yard. This is where situational awareness is huge for these players. And Joe Burrow really needed to just hit Higgins on that quick play.
And he zeroed in on Chase and made a harder throw than he needed to.
Made a hard chase. Because Jalen Ramsey and Nick Scott, when they were switching
switching those responsibilities,
they ran into each other.
Yeah.
So Higgins was wide open. The flank could have probably picked up 10 yards easy, but definitely the first down. So right there's your first miscue. They go four and out basically, turn the ball over, and then what happens? LA
scores their first touchdown with OBJ. Yeah.
Exactly. So then the very next one, this all kind of happened more or less in the second half of the game. It was a 3rd and 3 coming right off of that interception, that horrible interception that Matt Stafford threw. That wasn't the horrible one. That was the one at the end of the half where he threw that horrible one. It was the one where it was tipped and Cincinnati capitalized.
Yes.
So 3rd and 3, right after that interception, you got the momentum running. Cincinnati's up 17-13 at this point. You have the ability to go up 24-13 and then really put the pressure on the Rams offense, right? Well, Tyler Boyd, it's one of those read option routes for a receiver. Based on where the defense is, if they're inside or outside. Exactly. If they're inside, you're going to go out. If they're outside coverage, you're going to go in. Well, Tyler Boyd runs this in route. He goes up 5 yards and then comes in. And when Taylor Rapp, who is the defensive back for the Rams, he's on the inside coverage.
And so Burrow was going to throw out.
You see him. He sees the coverage. He's going to get ready. He pulls that ball back. Boyd comes in instead of going out. That immediately, the miscommunication. Burrow has to bring the ball down. He gets sacked on that play.
Yeah.
Huge play. Goes to 4th down. They settle for a field goal.
I think they had a 3 and out after they had, or not a 3 and out, but a 3 and then 3 plays, then a field goal.
That's what it was.
They didn't move the ball much at all.
That's what it was after that interception. They didn't. It was a 3 and out, and that was the big deal right there. He would have had that out route wide open for at least a first down, and that would have continued the drive, maybe score a touchdown.
And part of that is just building up chemistry with your players. That's part of mastering an offense and getting really, really good at it.
Part of just game planning, too. I mean, that's the simple basics.
But that's just the thing. If you're looking at this, it was either, based on these first 2 things, it was either a mistake by Burrow in the context of zeroing in on Chase too much and missing Higgins, and then not Burrow making a mistake here, but Boyd making a mistake here. And that's to say nothing about his drop that happened later in the game.
And that's another big point right there. I mean, that was one of the biggest moments in the game. Right there, I think that's really where the momentum was kind of just taken away from Cincinnati and given back to
If Boyd makes that catch.
He didn't drop a pass
in the slot. None.
All year. Not one drop pass. Biggest moment of his game of his life right here.
He's going to have a hard time recovering from that.
I mean, it's one of those things. That's the thing is you see this from a young team. They're an inexperienced team.
True.
So as long as they go back, view that film, learn from it, and then they come back better, I feel like they have the ability to do that. And
I do too.
That would be really cool to see them possibly return or something of that nature.
Not to mention with Burrow on a rookie contract and a lot of these guys that are young on rookie contract.
To see if they can.
If they can keep drafting well, which is never a guarantee.
Right.
But if they can keep drafting well, since he's got a shot, but man, the AFC's loaded, and we'll go over that in another episode, kind of prepping for the draft and all that. But,
right. But back to that point, it was 39. 6.5 minutes left in the game. They're down at this point, right? That drop, wide open little inside route, he just drops it. It would have been a first down. You would have kept that momentum going, kept the drive going. And then probably the most mind-boggling one, you can call it mind-boggling now after the fact because it was the 2nd and 1. It was that last drive since he had. So they're down 23-20 at this point. There's only a couple minutes left, I think less than 2 minutes left. Mm-hmm. And it was right before Aaron Donald got his 2 back-to-back sacks to end the game. That's 2nd and 1. You just got a 1st and 10. You get 9 yards. Driving down the field, you're going to try to go tie the game up with a field goal or let Joey B win it for you, right? 2nd and 1. Joey throws that just deep pass to no one when Jamar Chase was running up the sideline.
It was a bust.
It was kind of a bust, right?
Play. But where the hell was Joe Mixon through all this?
Right. I mean, he started the game off 15 carries, 72 yards, averaging 4.8 yards a carry.
And he threw a freaking touchdown
and he threw a
pass.
touchdown the first time.
Like, as much as I don't care for the guy character-wise after what he did at Oklahoma with that whole...
Long story there.
Longer story than we have time for.
You can look it up if you don't know.
Yeah. But the guy was balling. The guy was having a great game, and I don't know why they didn't go to him more often.
It's one of those things, man. You get away from what you know. You get in your head. You get in your head too much, you get cute, just like we talked about leading up to the Super Bowl. But the main thing with that 2nd and 1 where he just throws it up to Chase, he had 3 receivers on the left side. Wide open. Defense is playing soft, off coverage, 5-10 yards off. And it's 2nd and 1. Again, situational awareness. This is where the Tom Brady's, the Aaron Rodgers, usually these elite quarterbacks step up. They know where to get the yardage.
I would not put A-Rod in there because he zeroes in on Adams too much. But I understand.
Well, that's all he's got, too, for the most part. And Adams is a phenomenal quarterback or receiver. So
still, though. But it speaks to the point.
It speaks to the point because that's the thing is you got to have that mental ability to understand where the sticks are. And that's what made Tom Brady so great. You know, these little quick things, get to yards to get your 10 yards.
He was efficient. He didn't care who made the play, just as long as someone made the play.
As long as it was. And that's what it was. You know, 3 receivers on the left side, all running quick, 2-yard, 3-yard ups and then ends, wide open, off coverage, and he throws this deep nothing to Chase. And then obviously he didn't get another chance to redeem himself because 3rd and 1, Aaron Donald just blew up the play. It was the handoff to Pirine. We were talking about Mixon. Where's Mixon at? You hand it to Pirine because he's more of your bruiser.
Your power back, yeah. But Mixon can pick up short yardage too.
2 carries, 0 yards in the game for Pirine. Granted, the tackle for loss that Aaron Donald did on that 3rd and 1, and then they go for a 4th and 1. Joe Burrow's dead in the dirt before he can get the ball out. So,
and not to mention we find out later that he had a sprained MCL to finish that game, which obviously is going to hinder your
mobility, especially when you got Aaron Donald coming after you. So,
but the reality is the Bengals really fought their butts off. But you got to give the Rams credit for coming and finishing that game off regardless.
Right.
I mean, they're big time players, make big time plays at a big time moment of the game.
And that's why they gave up all their draft picks and their future is for the next 5 years.
But I kind of like some of the articles that have come out in support of Les Snead, the Rams GM, with regards to some of these moves. Because if you're working with a mid-30s quarterback in Stafford that obviously has, probably 3 to 5, hopefully really good years left in his career after being battered in Detroit for all those years. You've got Cooper Kupp.
You've got to sell out to give him everything you can.
Well, you've got Cooper Kupp on a really friendly contract in a a lot of respects.
Right now,
they just signed him to an extension.
Oh, did they sign him for an extension?
Yeah, they signed him to a very team-friendly extension. You brought in Odell Beckham Jr. to replace Robert Woods after he got hurt. Higbee's on a pretty team-friendly deal, if I remember right. And then, their offensive line is solid, but their defensive line, going after Von Miller, being aggressive and going after these established players that can play in your system and that
they got
to adjust.
Steal for Jalen Ramsey a couple years ago.
They did.
That was
so if you're able to get some of the best players at their position and surround them with talent from the 3rd to the 7th rounds and draft for need and draft the best player that's going to fit your schemes rather than just going after the stud muffins, but getting stud muffins that are already developed by other teams.
Yeah.
I can kind of understand the strategy.
Yeah,
I can.
Definitely.
I absolutely can. It's different.
And that's kind of a little bit what the Bucks did a little bit.
I was going to say the Bucks built through the draft in a lot of ways.
On the defensive side, for sure.
And then, of course, they brought in Lenny on the offensive side. They drafted Godwin and Evans. And
Evans
Miller, and they brought in Gronk, and
so,
obviously brought in Brady. Though. So it's a different way of building a team, and
it's a good way. I mean, we see it work, and it's worked. It's worked in this year. It's worked before too. When you bring in these veteran players.
Well, and same thing with the Saints over the past couple of years before Breeze retired. Like you thought they were going to be in salary cap, hell for a long time, but they were able to make it work, and they were able to still have pretty elite players.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too is that it's one of those things funny that these NFL franchises, they know how to kind of work that salary cap. They always option it off to the following year, and then the following year, so they just keep pushing it down the line.
It's kicking the can down the road.
Exactly. But that's the main thing, man. Is like looking over statistic wise. Joey Burrow had a pretty good game. Other than being sacked for 7 times for 43 yards. of a loss, he still threw for 263 yards. He was 22 of 33. His QBR is not very good because he only had one touchdown. It was a 39.7 QBR. Joe Mixon on the end, 100. Because, that 1-for-1 touchdown pass.
Right.
And then Matt Stafford, he really did. He threw up that one ball at the end of the half, which, that's kind of just like a 50-50.
It's a throwaway.
Give it up. And
but I thought they still could have gotten a freaking field goal on that drive if they had managed it better.
Right. And then, he comes off and he gets another interception in the very first play of the opening half.
The second half, yeah.
The second half, yeah. And so it's just one of those things, he ended up having a QBR of 60.8. He was only sacked twice, though. That's where the real big difference comes in. And then definitely, there was no running game. I mean, the total team running was 43 yards for the Rams.
Yeah, they could not run on
Cincinnati's defense.
Which surprised me. I wasn't expecting that. Cam Akers didn't do a thing. Michelle didn't do anything. But
no, definitely the difference was the defense. And not to say anything bad about Cincinnati's defense either, because
they pretty much balled out most of the game.
Logan Wilson, and that penalty called on Logan Wilson in the fourth quarter at that last drive
it's
garbage. They had to make up for the horrible
the face mask on Higgins, yeah.
Which, granted, that was very blatant. It's just one of those things where it's a perspective angle. It's a human error to the game and so forth.
And people will say the same thing about the Logan Wilson penalty too. They will.
They will, but man, that was. Logan Wilson had 9 tackles. 8 of them were solos. He had 3 tackles for loss and 1 pass deflection. He had a great game. It's just one of those things that they just couldn't really push it through, and it's really unfortunate because I wanted Cincinnati to win. I really kind of did. But it was a great game. We talked about the halftime show real briefly because that was an awesome halftime show. Very nostalgic for our generation, especially.
For sure.
Growing up, listening to those artists and things like that. So,
and I think there was one more bit that we were going to cover just to kind of address the Super Bowl hangover and kind of see if it was real or not.
Yeah.
And we were looking through things from 2011 until 2021. And out of all of these teams, you were able to get this from Brian DeArdo with CBS Sports.
Yeah.
Out of all the teams, you're talking the Steelers, the Patriots, the Niners, the Broncos, the Panthers, the Falcons, the Patriots a couple times.
They're all Super Bowl
the Rams,
losers.
the Chiefs. They're all Super Bowl losers. There were only 2 teams out of all those that actually had a losing record the next year. It was the Panthers and
that was right after Cam's MVP season when they got smacked by the Broncos and Von Miller won his MVP there.
But the Panthers and the 49ers were the only ones that really nosedived. The Panthers, they got one incredible year out of Cam Newton, and then it kind of bottomed out.
Right.
And then the Niners, of course, had their injury issues in 2020 and were going all over the place to play their games because they couldn't play in San Francisco or Santa Clara. So that's
an
outlier.
Kind of think. I remember as a kid growing up, these teams that went to the Super Bowl and they lost, it was devastating.
Except for the Bills.
Yeah, right. 4 times in a row they make it back. But that's the thing is I felt like when you lost the Super Bowl, it was devastating. These teams either just fell apart, crumbled,
or free agency
killed them, injuries killed them, or they just couldn't make it back for a couple years. And over the last decade, we've seen that shift change where the teams that make it, they lose, they get back there again. At least they get back to the playoffs again.
To give them another chance.
To get a chance.
Hey, Cowboys fans, I promise you they have a chance next year. Just like everyone else.
Typical Cowboy fan.
Hey, it's the truth, though. Everybody technically has a shot.
Everyone has a shot.
Everyone is 0-0 until they have that first regular season game in the fall.
Very true. Everyone's undefeated, right?
Everyone's
undefeated until week 1's final.
Either way, we appreciate y'all listening. We appreciate y'all watching.
One more note I have right here.
What you got?
I got, do we think the Rams will run it back?
No.
No. Aaron Donald seemed to think so. At that parade, we built a super team. Why can't we run it back?
He was also running around with his shirt off, clearly inebriated.
Hey, if I looked like Aaron Donald, I was that big of a man, I'd be shirtless everywhere too.
That's okay. Fair, but I don't see them being able to retain all of the talent that they really need to retain in order to do it. But bringing Robert Woods back healthy next year could be a huge catalyst for them.
You think OBJ comes back next year for them?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Because you have Woods, you have Woods and
Jefferson.
Cup, and Van Jefferson might get pushed out of that third receiver role, and I think OBJ is a better fit than Jefferson is in that role.
I'd have to look to see if he's still under his rookie contract, because if he's still under his rookie contract, that's a cheap cheap assets.
Out of Florida,
yeah, exactly.
And
so,
he had his freaking first kid that night.
Yeah, what a day! I mean, his wife had to leave during the game.
Yeah, because she
to
went
go
into
to
labor.
the hospital, and then after he wins the Super Bowl, he's out there with his team.
He has to
leave and run and go gets to see his newborn. So that's a really cool story for somebody like that.
Hey, you can't be nothing but happy for him.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, the thing is we appreciate y'all listening. We appreciate y'all watching. We obviously had a great time with it this season, and we'll keep doing, periodic shows, I guess you could say. We're going to be delving a little bit more into college football going into the spring and summer, going into next fall. So we'll be able to kind of dovetail between the collegiate and the pro game in a little bit of a different way. And then the next 2 episodes that we're going to be doing are an AFC draft preview and then an NFC draft preview, kind of give you an idea of what to expect with the Combine. Just little fun things that we've brought up that we think y'all will enjoy. So we appreciate y'all listening and we appreciate y'all watching.
Yeah, definitely, man. You guys take care and keep it up, man. If you guys check out our YouTube content and reach out to us, let us know if there's things that you want to reminisce about, talk with us, that we want to go over, things like that.
Or if you want us to go over like historical teams that you remember as a kid that even whether they won a Super Bowl or not, if you just have memories about a certain player or a certain team or a certain coach or anything of that nature, or a certain offense that you loved watching as a kid that either petered out or has stayed the course through all these years.
And CY over here is a big architectural nut. He loves the stadiums. He can take forever to talk about the way they build these stadiums, the names of the stadiums, where they get them from. So even little things like that, just reach out to us, send us a comment on the YouTube page, or even on Spotify, if you can do that. But otherwise else, we'll catch you next time on our next episode.
Absolutely. And we'll bring you the beer reviews for this week and the next 2, just to give you a heads up.
Beer review, guys. We're drinking on them now. Take care.
Thanks, y'all.